Hello, welcome to Pix Force Podcast. We are here at OTC Brazil, Offshore Technology Conference, and we are very excited with all the guests and all the talks we have been doing this week. This is the second day of the conference, and I'm here today with Jory Schrock, who is the CEO of Andium. Jory, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, no,
It's a great pleasure.
You got my name correct. It's
Yeah.
very rare. Most of these, it's butchered somewhere in translation. So no, it's great to be here. We picked a great week with COP coming up. Brazil is a unique position in time, and it's really cool to see a lot of technology companies making their way into an environment that is poised for scaling. It's great.
Yeah. It's been a great week. We're going to talk about Nvidia. We just discussed that. But are we going to go to COP?
It won't be in COP because it's really north.
Yeah.
So far
it's
north. But we'll be watching from afar. Probably at this point we'll be in the Middle East, but we'll be watching from afar and excited for announcements and continued support of the mission to decarb the world slowly, step by step.
Yeah. So can you talk about Andium and explain what you guys do?
Sure.
Can you do like your elevator pitch?
My elevator pitch? Yeah, no. I like to describe it as we're trying to bring the field to the office. And in order to bring the field to the office, you have to start by giving visibility to the office. And the technologies that have existed for a long time and continue to be developed are very, very tactical by nature, right? They're very engineering approach, very molecular, if you will, downhole, really detailed. And in the US, when we were building our first set of products, what we noticed was there's a lot of labor involved in the space. And a lot of that is because no two locations, no two infrastructures look the same. So just like no two companies look the same. And so we couldn't help develop consistency in this approach for building out the visibility for the office. So what we did was we just followed operators around in a truck, just like they do, going location by location, checking on things. We would take notes like researchers, if you will. And what we wanted to know is there consistency in the things they do? And is there commoditization in other markets that you could take advantage of the hard research and development commercialization of another market? So for example, a camera that can see gas is very expensive, or has been for a very long time. And I suspect that has to do with, not a lot of competition.
Yes.
But in other markets, the sensors, or at least the spectrums, have forever been needed. For example, the same lenses that they use in cars to see through fog, so you don't hit a person in a self-driving car, can see methane. And it just had never been properly integrated to see and focus on methane because no one had worked on the lensing and putting the pieces together. But that was an order of magnitude cheaper, $150,000 to $15,000, if you will, to see the same thing, and almost better because it was less noise in silicon than in these big bolometers. And what we realized was there's a lot of these, like optical, thermal, gas imaging, and new sensors all the time that other markets, self-driving cars, smartphones, data centers are commoditizing, industrializing. And what we realized is if you layer that on top of the need to process this information, because there's a lot of information, and you have to look at the self-driving car brought on Nvidia graphics processors, right down to the location to be able to put them in your computer, right, to build these data centers. But now you could put them in a car, which means you could put them in a camera. And so we saw the opportunity to replace the infrastructure for office workers, for field workers of yesterday, for the office and leadership of today, to be able to bring that data back to the office by using lenses that could see through things or see what's going on to allow operators to operate more effectively. Even when they have, the command switches in the office, they have to send someone out there. You can't just turn something on without checking on it. And now just by having a camera out there, that was like step one. And so what we did is we followed them around and we found a lot of consistency in the challenges. An example of this would be when we first went out to a field, they put us on a legacy well. And on that legacy well, we found that they would ask the guy who pumps the hauler that pumps out the oil from the site, he would leave in carbon paper his before and after numbers. Always skeptical right there.
Yeah.
But then he would leave it on carbon paper and he would tape it to the side of the tank that he had to climb and check, just like you would check oil in your car 10 years ago, right? Yeah. And he would leave it on carbon paper and he would leave a copy in a pickle jar that he had duct taped to the side of the facility. And so the traders of the commodity would call the pumper to ask him how much he took, because it would take a month or days at least before the person who worked the site, the pumper, would come around, pick up the ticket, give it to the secretary. She would put it into Excel, send that to the... So it's all legacy, right? Yeah. And what we realized was, like, some sites had really advanced sensors, like going into the site, which still had issues like sludge buildup, so that's not perfect. But there's no consistency. And so even the most comprehensive locations couldn't get good data to operate from the site. So what we saw is this opportunity to say, can we bring the price down enough that putting in the infrastructure, just like we're seeing with any infrastructure, was low enough in cost that we could take that first step? And then could we partner or bring in other technologies that could layer in the details that even like we weren't built for? An example I can think of out of the gate is we see a methane leak. We see it happening, but we're not sure. How do we call out a guy or a drone to come check it, to quantify it, to measure that volume, knowing it's happening right now and recording that event, right? And then come back around later on and make sure everything is working nice and get back to operations as usual without putting a person there. This concept has been around a long time. It's called operate by exception, but it's really hard to do because you had to somehow see without seeing.
Yeah.
So Andium saw this opportunity. We started moving into the upstream space, and then we started seeing the same themes in every other market. We work with Freeport McMoran in mining now. We work with landfills up in Canada. The consistency of how humans have terraformed the world, have made it look more human, has resulted in the ability to bring the field to the office and this consistent idea of viewing it remotely, having notifications that trigger on these events, and then using those events to help operations become more efficient. Because in the end of the day, it's about lowering the price of the lifting cost. We call that the lease operating cost, right? Like the LOE needs to come and be more efficient. And in order to do that, you have to start with your highest cost center, which is going to be labor. And that's no different in an oil platform either, right? Like you have that labor there, but they had to helicopter them in. So the more effectively they can use and the more safely they can use those operators, the better for everybody, right? It's a win all around.
And they don't have space, right? They don't have space for people.
And they don't have space for people. And when people are there, they're often contractors. Yeah. So they hope they're following all the rules, but they don't have a way of being like, oh, there's something happening right now. We see this in drilling all the time, actually. During drilling operations, there's a disconnect between what the drilling provider, could be like a Halliburton or a third party, right, is saying is happening versus what the operator who's responsible for taking on this asset knows is happening. And so having this record, this visible record, this ability to take that data and recreate it consistently is helping everyone. And then what we feel is that data shouldn't be ours, and it's not. We don't believe in owning data. That's actually not our play. We're not a data company in a way. Our view is to bring about that data by running models that can recognize what things are, like that's a guy not wearing his hard hat. This is the tank level, and sending it as data to the operator so they can build on top of that, right? And then we help them report on it. So from an operational perspective, it would be like, when do we trigger someone to go out there and work the field? And it's a fascinating world, because once we put out that infrastructure, now the opportunities aren't about the infrastructure for once, right? So you actually can buy even more commoditized components because you can just integrate them, because it's a modern technology stack rather than a legacy SCADA infrastructure.
Yeah, that's great. So why Andium? So it's a great name, very unique. So why?
Yeah. So
how did you come
to see in the range of infrared? There's different types of dopant materials you would use when you make the silicon. So you need something that is high resistance in temperature, but also has really good visibility and noise to signal ratio. And the best two that I've seen is actually indium, and on one side with the P and the N doping being opposites, and antimony.
Oh, okay.
And so I put them together and made this elemental idea. It's actually, our logo is very elemental, right? Circles and squares, like this idea, like we're trying to bring about this new elemental level, this new infrastructure level. And so ran with our theme of what we felt was the future coming of the next wave of technology in the space.
That's awesome. So do you position your company as a deep tech company, or so? How?
No. I don't like taking risk in deep research and development. I believe that you need a much bigger market for that component, just in the deep tech concept, in order to do that. And the conviction and the market opportunity and the penetration you would needs to be in volume of units at a incredible scale. I think of us more as commercialization, almost like an accidental integrator. But really our view is more like an Apple. And I think what makes us different is that we're end to end. What I mean by that is when you put out one of our units, it looks like a normal CCTV camera with all this tech inside. It's got its own communications module. It's got it can even link to Starlink. It's got its own graphics processor. And uniquely in our system, actually, the graphics processor is directly connected to the silicon of the sensors. So we can actually process and pre-process, which is a major advantage in trying to see things like methane at detail, right? Because you need a lot more gain control around areas. And we have a lot of IP in that space. But the idea, if you pull this whole thing together, is you're almost acting as an intent for the customer in that if anything happens, hey, we need to put this out there. Hey, we don't know why we're seeing weird data. Hey, we need to understand, we need a model built for this. It's a one-stop shop. And so a lot of the operators will come and ask us to build things. And so I think of our research and development more about productization and commercialization based on customer demands than I think about like an implicit innovation company where we're just like focused on like making this one thing, this better version of this one thing. I think of us as more of like trying to ride the wave of all of the hard work of many, many companies. Right? Like what NVIDIA has done for processing is extraordinary. And I don't think they'll be the last, but I think they're the high flyer today, right? The fact that you can run one on a camera in the middle of the ocean, right, in real time at 60 frames a second, if necessary, to see really unique things that have never been contemplated before. I'll give you an example. When you recover air off the back of a refinery, it's actually a real visibility into how efficient the refining is running. And they can have stress issues below these fans as well. Today, you'd have to have temperature sensors pointed everywhere. And if you bought a thermal camera, you actually couldn't do any better because all of the processing that the camera can do, which isn't very much, those basic cameras, means that the output you're getting doesn't give you a lot of visibility on like every pixel. But because we have the NVIDIA GPU directly connected to the thermal image, we can process every single pixel and temperature and track it to find patterns that no one had even contemplated, to see where heat was moving in a way that like it's like 87 billion data points per week per sensor. I don't even know how you would transmit that. I don't even think today's modern stack could process that. It would be something like 800 gigs a month for one sensor. Is it doable? Of course. But the bandwidth of
and where we're going to store all this data.
And what are you going to do with it, right? Like you don't even know. So, and that's another challenge I think operators have had. They've built amazing things in-house. They have all this know-how that's like caught in the company. And really what they need is support on outcome, right? Like everyone wants to build the next great thing, but you really need outcome. You need somebody who's solving a problem.
And I think right now we are living like in a magical moment because you were mentioning about the auto industry that with autonomous cars, all these sensors are getting cheaper and cheaper. So how do you see this? I think you are trying to take advantage of all this technology that's being developed.
Here's a really interesting thought experiment. If autonomous, especially with battery technologies, like imagine what that would look like, continue on this current path, even if it takes time, at some point in time, the cost of your Uber ride will be 1/10 of today's cost. At what point in time is it no longer economic for an individual to have their own insurance and have their own car, right? Like you have Elon betting on like robo-taxi, but like look out long enough where instead of 30 reais for a ride that I got here this morning, it was 3. Okay, do you really want it? Like parking would be more expensive. So if you think about where that wave goes, and even the starting points of long haul trucking, right? As that goes, you can then start to think for the first time, like what would even like the petroleum companies do? Because at that point, when the cost is so commoditized across the whole system, the cars are just going to charge up as they need and so on and so forth. It's going to democratize this idea of what cars really are.
Yeah.
Right. And we're definitely on that path. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
And if you want to see the sliver of what that looks like, NVIDIA's market capitalization today crossed 5 trillion.
Yeah.
And it, by the way, it didn't go from like 4.8 to 4.9 to 5 trillion. It went from like 4.8 to like 5.2, right? Like at some point, that number is just so crazy. The opportunity of what that means for the demand for this new evolution is these are the outcomes they're going to need.
Yeah.
These are the
And we
wins
were
that-
talking before about the bubble that everybody say, oh, we are living a bubble and things are going to change very quickly, but we are not seeing that, right? It's
right.
like, it's just
well,
growing.
It is a bubble. I just don't think it's anywhere near bursting, if you will. Like,
yes.
I think it's a hype bubble, if you will, but it's not dead. It's equity in each other. Like they're betting on this future well ahead of what the use cases and the revenues would need to be to justify it. So could it come down? I think it's possible. I think it's really unlikely. And I think it'll be a long time from now before that comes down. And so I think as a company moving in innovation space, I think the ecosystem for the first time that's coming to companies like ours is taking advantage of that commoditization, what that could mean from a product perspective that you could build on top of this new wave of infrastructure. It's incredible. Like, do you remember when Uber was trying to build a self-driving car with Carnegie Mellon?
Yeah.
They realized it kind of out of their lane, right? They're like, oh, well, maybe we should focus on Uber and the ecosystem and not so much the vehicle itself,
Yeah.
right? That's not their
And then we
specialty.
can buy a vehicle from someone
Yeah,
else.
buy a vehicle from Waymo, you know?
Yeah.
It's incredible because when you think about that for the first time, you think to yourself, industrial companies that are in the past, like oil and gas is interesting because they were the leaders in technology. And I mean tech, not engineering, in technology, when we put in data centers. And then the personal computer came out and changed everything. And it became a little legacy stuck in itself on SCADA infrastructure. And that's why we're here today talking about this. But now with this new infrastructure coming in for the first time, that's a leapfrogging opportunity for the operators that can get out of their own way. The ones who can say, yeah, we want to own the data, that's fine. But maybe we don't need to build the camera,
Yes.
right? And we don't need to build the drone,
Yeah.
and we don't need to build the pieces. We can take advantage of these platforms that are showing up, who are eager to build and productize and take advantage of that, and then leapfrog the market and innovating the energy space.
Yeah.
Conceptually, could it be like robot dogs and robot people walking around turning knobs and all stuff? Yeah, it could be. Is that cost effective today? Probably not. But somewhere in the middle, there's a lot of productization that's coming. And a good example I think of today already is just flaring. It's that for a very long time, the cost of gas was so low that they just flared it because they wanted the oil. They didn't want the gas. And when it comes out, and we learn this, it comes out of the ground with the oil, and it's methane. It's really potent from the standpoint of CO2 equivalents. So you can't just leave it as methane. You have to burn it. And they don't even know half the time that the pilot light, just like on your stovetop, has gone out. So they end up venting methane into the atmosphere completely unintentionally. But it wasn't worth it. Now all of a sudden natural gas is valuable, right? It's powering every AI data center. So now they're trying to hook up pipelines and they're trying to capture this natural gas, and they need to see where the leaks are. They need to see this process. And
I was in Guyana 2 months ago, and they are building like a huge power plant to use the gas because they don't have enough electricity for the country.
okay,
They don't have hydropower. So the idea is to use the gas to help the country because they don't have electricity. And
Absolutely.
they have plenty of gas there. So
but then to build that infrastructure, which they haven't done in a long time, they have a lot of pneumatics that are just leaking.
yeah.
Right. So you need technologies, products to come in and support that transition.
Yeah.
Just like any transition, it's going to be a transition. It takes time. And yeah, I'd say that the world is shifting under our feet at a very fast clip.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So think about the world. Andium is a global company. You have offices in the US. The headquarters is in New York, right?
It is, but we have people in Houston. We have people across every patch actually, all the way up into North Dakota, and in the Middle East now.
And you said that your partner is from Norway, right?
We have our chairman is Norwegian,
Yeah.
so we've learned a lot about offshore from the operators that focus so heavily on offshore for sure.
So how is the experience of being a global company, going to such different countries, different cultures? You are now in Brazil, in Rio. So how is the experience of having a startup that's operating in so many countries?
Yeah, it's a lot of travel miles for sure. I do believe strongly that it's incumbent upon leadership in a company to go understand that. Like that, one of the reasons we're here is there's no better way to learn except with your customers. You have to go. You can't just send people. You have to be there yourself. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to these companies and understand. One of the things I've noticed is that every part of the world, they purchase, they partner, and they innovate differently. Brazil likes to manufacture. It's like in their DNA, and they like they like grants and partnerships and things that build, like project-based things. In the U.S., that's not really a thing. Right? If you see a joint venture, it's usually between Exxon and Conoco, right? On a big risky project.
I think one of the reasons that in the US you have more venture capital, so people are willing to take risk. And when I see Brazil, it's completely different place that people are, they have the money, but maybe I'm going to leave the money in the bank, and the interest rate is high.
It's high.
So, so it's a problem.
And you have a big banking sector, right? So that's probably a part of it as well. But I think one of the things in Brazil that's interesting is that the use of capital from the company as a tax incentive to put back into research and development, it drives a lot of innovation.
Yes.
What I'm curious to see as we're going into this, not just COP, but this forward view with a lot of these companies that are trying to build, is how do you then partner and scale?
Yeah.
Because it is one thing to build something cool, right? Everybody loves doing it. Every founder loves that. But it's how do you actually productize? How do you hold the line and build and
how do you convince people to buy your product, right?
That is always a challenge. I think one of the advantages Andium has is that our return on investment is about 3 to 6 months. It's really fast.
Yeah.
So people can see that return very directly in the drop in their LOE cost, directly in savings on labor, not to mention all the ancillary, the existential topics like ESG, like critical risk, like catastrophic care, like safety. So it solves a lot of pieces because you have eyes, right? You can bring that field to the office.
Yeah.
And that's helpful. But I think what that does is positions us, in my opinion, it positions us as a responsible party in the thought leadership of how to partner. Because if we're building this infrastructure and bringing this in, how do we then enable others? Because I think in an ecosystem like this, it's more fun to get big with your friends, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, we can go and see that there's an issue on location, but we don't send humans out there, right? So how do we not only work with the operators, but work with other technology companies that can put, eyes in the sky, a drone right on the location? I heard a really funny anecdote recently. It said, well, you're going to put people out of jobs. And I said, well, with the way that we're not having a lot of kids these days, I think the issue won't be jobs, right? And they said, well, then you can send the drones. And then we've been talking, and one of the funny parts that came out of this, well, maybe we can effectively use the drones, which means you'll need less drones. So now we're going to have drones out of jobs. Right? But the reality is you want a streamlined set of products and services because there's so much to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about regulation a little bit, because Brazil is starting to regulate methane emissions.
Yes.
That's coming up next year. So how are you seeing this in Brazil and other countries you operate, and how you can help with these new regulations, the new...
It's an interesting... Regulations are interesting because there's a carrot and there's a stick, right?
Yeah.
The carrot is incentives to change, right? Like money put towards the innovation. Project-based financing is a good example of this. Eventually, hopefully, a carbon credit ecosystem that isn't just OTC, over the counter. From the standpoint of regulation with stick, though, it's good to have an incentive. It's just that incentive needs to be in alignment with a realistic outcome. So, for example, if you're gonna fine based on emissions, like what we were seeing in the U.S. from the IRA bill when it was first proposed, it really gave a number for companies to think about, what does this cost us? But I think that's just the beginning of the conversation, because it gives somebody a number to think about. I think complying with that number is hard. The technology is necessary, and the decisions that have to be made of what's the best way to achieve that number. Is it replace your pneumatics? Is it to monitor more often? I think what we're seeing globally is this LDAR, this consistent periodic review process to know how we're doing. And it's logical because it allows people to get onto a pattern. Like how do we look at things and work with the regulation? The hard part is, and I think this is just one of the big challenges in this ecosystem, is leaks don't happen when you're looking. They happen when they happen, and then they stop, and then they start, and then they stop.
And nobody wants to have leakage.
And no one wants it. So it's not like they're going to report the things that they might have seen that weren't required for them. So what they need is a way to mitigate the leak. So an example with Andium is we have a continuous monitoring camera. So if there's a leak, we'll pick it up. We'll send a notification in real time. They can go address it in real time. Right? That's what people want. They want a way to be better. Right? And the operations team wants to agree with leadership on a way to go about doing that. Not just a number, if you don't do this, then this. Because I think it just doesn't give people a path, right? And I think when I think about drones and the use of periodic technologies, is one of the advantages they do have, especially drones, is you can get real close. And do it relatively safely, assuming the weather's holding up. Right? If you can do that and know when and what you're supposed to be looking at, imagine what that ecosystem could look like. We pick up a leak. It's coming from this piece of pneumatic. We can see it on our camera lens. We can quantify it, right? Then it sends out a drone. The drone gets out there and there's no leak right now, right? But because they have their footage, they know what was leaking. Now the team can force the event to occur by pushing on that pneumatic. The drone can pick up the exact and pinpoint where it is. And then the human can finally go out there and fix it. And now you just stop the leak in its tracks. And that is a massive savings to the ecosystem, because it's revenue that you're just losing to the atmosphere.
Jory, I'm really enjoying the conversation. There are so many questions I would love to ask, but there's one final one that I think is going to be very important for our audience. It's about investment. You are part of a CVC investment, CVC group. So tell us the experience and the pros and cons about having large corporates investing in a startup. So what's your experience?
It feels always like a double-edged sword. So when you work with a corporate, some corporates are really tied into operations. Some corporates operate off the balance sheet, but they're pretty free-flowing. They can kind of invest in whatever they'd like. And in that way, the CVCs that are most helpful are the ones that can help you find the leaders, the internal heroes within the organization, to help you scale through the organization, because it's a win-win, right? That's really difficult when you're early, because you don't know a lot yet. And there's a lot of risk in that concept still, right? And sure, a corporate might be able to eat that risk because it could be beneficial to them. So there is a pathway there. I would say that if I were a younger startup, I would focus on more traditional venture capital, where the risk is more about your ability to build something that is differentiated, regardless of the industry you're operating in, and that they understand the journey you're about to go on and where those incentives are and where the advantages are. Once you have a good feel of your product market fit, like I'd say like Series B, then CVCs start to make sense, because they can understand how they can take advantage of something that's practical, right? Something that actually is going to move the needle. What's hard.
And it's going to be faster for them to become a client, right? Because
Exactly.
because you're more advanced.
And when they become a client and they see those benefits and so on, now there's comfort in you working not just with them, but with others, because there's somebody who's taken that risk out of it, right? Like, look, we've talked about this. Oil companies fight really hard with each other, right? It's like with knives out. But somehow there are tons of joint ventures between them, because no one wants to take 100% of that risk. So my feeling is that I think our success in partnering with CVCs over the years, and we're doing more of them as we speak, is that you have to get far enough along for them to understand their place in the journey. And you have to really focus on what it is about your product that is delivering direct value to the CVC, rather than a mission-centric approach, which is we just want to change the world. Everyone wants to change the world, right? And so once you kind of get on that cadence with them, what that also unlocks is more CVCs. And actually, I think that consortium approach, like we've been lucky enough to have an incredible set of venture support. We have some individual tech investors who are very knowledgeable on data and on modeling and all that. And then we have climate investments who led our Series A. They're back. Their LPs are a lot of the large energy companies, which gives us a little bit of clout to the CVC that, hey, we'll be around tomorrow. And hey, we're on the right path and we're trying to solve a problem that's important to you. And then our Series B, we did with Aramco, which was amazing. We partnered with Aramco. And Aramco was really interesting because they're very focused on what they want. They want to lower emissions. They want a more targeted way to operate safely. And so we were able to take the cadence of we'll be around tomorrow, right? Because we have that built up cadence, and we link that back to what we can help solve for that operator. And I think that will continue because every operator has a common set of challenges, because oil and gas is a commodity business. So in the end of the day, there's a lot of similarities between these businesses. And I don't think it will stop at oil and gas. I think we're seeing a lot of trends in other markets, agriculture, landfills, areas where you can decarb, decarb's nice, areas where you can save money. You can make it profitable for the first time. And I think that's also unlocking decarb, right? Can you bring profit to the customer?
Yeah. Awesome. Is there anything else you would like to add? We are reaching the end here. So
I think I would only add that to the startups, it's important to really focus, right? And to the corporates, the same news. Like they have to stay true to the things that they're focused on. And I think it's these types of ecosystems, like what's happening with COP, these types of centralized thought leadership environments that help set that stage and give the backbone so that there's a little more comfort in taking that type of risk, right? It's a big risk for everybody. So in the end of the day, I'm excited to see as Brazil steps through COP and steps through what they believe is their pathway towards decarbonization, but also towards more efficient future technologies into their ecosystem, how they support their young and growing startups in the ecosystem. I'm really excited for that.
That's great, Jory. We have a final question for everybody who comes here.
Sure.
Can you recommend a book or movie or a podcast that really inspired you for our audience?
I think the best book I've ever read on if you're a startup on taking the plunge is Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yes.
Because
it's very good.
Because it shows the underbelly and the challenges of what it's like to be a startup and to go through that process and the chaos that ensues. But it also ends with a lot of hope, a feeling that like what we've seen, and this is not a new book, it's still true today. And that is really reassuring as a founder, because others, that ecosystem is there. It wasn't there when a lot of us started these businesses. That ecosystem was young, right? Especially in the US, it was very young even. It's been around, but it was young. And now you feel like the old is new and the new is old. So I would say, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
Okay, great suggestion. Jory, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And thank you for watching Pix Force Podcast.